Hello, this is Mark from Spanish Property Insight. In this video, I'm going to look at the latest Spanish housing market figures so buyers and vendors have an idea of what's going on in the market and where the trends are heading. I won't go into much detail, just look at the latest overall picture of home sales, mortgage lending and house prices at a national level, and then a little bit more detail on the regions of most interest to foreign investors, like areas like the coast, the islands and Madrid. If you're in the market, it helps to know where the trends are heading, so as that can help inform your decisions. So what's the data we're looking at? Well, the Spanish Association of Notaries have just published their monthly housing market figures for November of last year, which are the most timely figures available based on sales witnessed by notaries in that month. To start with, let's have a look at monthly home sales figures for Spain as a whole. Well, I didn't have the page ready for where I wanted to start, but here we are. So here we can see the sales each month in 2020 in the dark blue columns are the sales, and here in month 11, so that's November, so there were 58,942 home sales in all of Spain, which was a decline of 8% year on year compared to the previous year. The interesting thing in this chart is you can see where the trend is going. We started the year with sales up 36%, and we ended the year with sales down 8% and a clear declining trend as you go through the year. So that is how this year has performed, but let's see how November of this year performs against other years. So filter the table to months of November, going back to 2007. Not a bad month, second highest level. Last year was the highest. This November, November 2022 was the highest level of sales going back to 2007, the second highest level of sales going back to 2007, and much better than previous years since the recovery began. So clearly November of last year, sales were, although declining compared to a year before, they were still pretty strong. Now let's look at the 12-month rolling sales figure for a bigger picture that gives you a better sense of the underlying trend, because it smooths out the month-to-month basis. So to do this, I just have to filter the table a bit. And then here we get the 12-month rolling. You can see, what do we see here? You can see the big swings, pandemic-related big decline in the pandemic, and then this big increase, a big recovery after the pandemic. The blue area line is the annualized change in the 12-month rolling sales total figure, and that's really the leading indicator. You can see that it's going down steeply, so that's telling us that the sales growth, the post-pandemic boom in sales growth is coming to an end and is on its way down, but we're still at this level, we're still positive, but it's heading down and it looks like it's going to be negative shortly. So that's the 12-month. Now let's look at the regional picture, looking at areas of most interest to foreign buyers and foreign investors. So here's sales by region. Andalusia is the biggest market. This chart just helps us to see how big these markets are. Andalusia is the biggest market, and the Balearics is the smallest, where the Balearics in November, 1,545 sales, and at the other end, Andalusia, 12,311. It's a much bigger market. Here you can, if anyone's interested, you can dig deep into this data. There's all the charts and all the tables you need if you subscribe to this data section. But I'm not going to go too much in this presentation into the tables, just look at the charts. So here let's see what happened to the sales per region. How did sales change? And here you can see quite a different outcomes in November, with Madrid down, sales down 13% compared to the previous year. Followed by Catalonia down 11%, Andalusia down 8%, the Balearics down 6%, Murcia unchanged, Canaries up 5%, and the Valencian region up 7%. So some regions still growing in November, whilst other regions declining by more than 10%. So that was the picture of sales. Now let's turn to prices. Here we can see a chart with the average national house price trend going back to the beginning of 2020. And as you can see, there was a decline in prices over the pandemic when the pandemic first struck, but then with the sales recovery came a big recovery in prices rising more than 10%, double figures for quite a lot of that period of time. But this year you see the trend coming down, a little bit of a pickup in September, but here we are ending November with prices increasing by just 1.2% and a clear downward trend. Now, what that's just the national picture gives you an idea of the market cycle, of the overall market cycle, but regional differences can be important. And in fact, when it comes to property, you want to know what's the price in your postcode. You don't really care about the national price, but anyway, it's good to get an idea of where Spain's heading in general. Now here we look at the figures. So this is a chart showing average prices paid in euro per square meter in the different regions of Spain. The Balearics, the most expensive part of Spain, where based on sales in November last year, the average price paid was 3,123 euros per square meter. At the other end of the scale, Murcia, where you can get where the average buyer spent 951 euros per square meter. But what happened to prices? How did they change in the period? Here you can see that in November, prices were still growing strongly in the Canaries, up 13%, and Madrid still up to 11%, despite we also saw that Madrid is where sales declined the most, but prices were still going up the most. Balearics up 4%, only in Murcia unchanged prices, and Catalonia prices soft, going down 1% in November compared to the previous year. So that is price. That was sales and house prices. Now let's have a quick look at the mortgage market. Here we have new mortgage lending this year every month, and August is always a small month for mortgages. There's not much we can see from this, but what we do know is that in November there were 28,391 new mortgages signed before notaries, which is interesting if we look at it in the annual change, because it's all relative. And here you can see that new mortgages have been rather the same as sales, as you would expect. This is the annualized change in new mortgage lending as the year progressed, and you can see going from 29% increase and quite strong growth at the beginning of the year, bit of a jump in August, but it's a small month. It's you never read too much into August figures when it comes to Spain. And then prices start new mortgage lending on the decline as we head towards the end of the year. So that was the mortgage market. Now let's go back to conclusions. What can we conclude from these figures? Well, home sales growth is slowing down gently. That's clearly happening at a national level and to a certain extent at regional levels. Sales are declining the most in Madrid and Catalonia, while still growing in the Canaries and the Valencian region. Price growth is cooling down across the board, but only so far negative in Catalonia. Mortgage lending is cooling down as well. And in conclusion, the overall takeaway is that the post-pandemic boom is running out of steam, as it inevitably would. That said, it looks like a soft landing, and there's no kind of huge downward lurches or anything too abrupt. So it looks like it's a gentle running out of steam. But the market does face growing headwinds in 2023, so it'll be interesting to see how it copes with them. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope you found that interesting.